I'm going to say it right now, this week has been one of the most intense weeks I've ever experienced in my life. Personally, socially, business-wise, everything. Everything's been bloody busy for me. And of course, the week everything's busy is the week the Nintendo Switch 2 launches. Just that day alone was crazy. I went from being on stage to the Nintendo New York store and then getting pints with these fellas. So it was a very, very fun night that day alone. That's one day out of like the past week. I would say 10 days or so. And, you know, I haven't really had a chance to get back in the swing of things in terms of doing videos over here, reporting on the news. I kind of wanted to take my time with the Switch 2 when it first came out. I was like, you know what? Let me spend some time playing Mario Kart, experiencing it for myself, not rushing into it to try and give you guys my initial thoughts. I really wanted to make sure I spent some time with the console before I came in jumping to conclusions or anything like that. And this video isn't even about any of that, because today we got an announcement of a new game. Because, of course, a new game got announced today. None other than Splatoon Raiders, which is a spin-off of the Splatoon series. And this is huge, actually. Like, obviously, we don't even know what the gameplay is really going to be like. So far, it seems that it could be potentially like a survival crafting game to a certain extent, which I like the idea of. I think like a Subnautica mixed with Splatoon sounds awesome if that is the case. But again, it just seems to have like quite similar mechanics to the regular Splatoon games. And that's what's interesting to me, because when you think about Splatoon spin-offs, because Splatoon as a series, right, it just turned 10 years old, which is pretty bloody cool, or not. Maybe that's pretty annoying for some people who don't like the passage of time. But since the series was initially in our hands, we've basically been thinking, ooh, this world is so bloody interesting, so cool. What other potential formats for games could they make out of this? And what I've always thought, which would be brilliant, would be a rhythm game. I think like a rhythm or like a music game could be brilliant, because there is such a focus on music in Splatoon. It just makes too much sense. So for them to not do that, you know, or not do any game which seems to be outside of the original genre is quite interesting, because from the looks of it, Splatoon Raiders feels almost like a DLC of sorts. At least that's what it seems like, a big bombastic DLC compared to what we've had previously, like Side Order, or before that, Octo expansion. This sort of feels in line with that. And what I mean by that is that it goes like, oh, this is going to be a very small experience, but it has the same gameplay as a regular Splatoon game, at least in terms of the regular mechanics. You still control a character the same way, still all that stuff. It's not a case of like, oh, it's a graphic novel this time, or oh, you're playing it like The Sims, it's a point and click. It still has the very standard format we're used to with Splatoon. So that alone, that aspect of it being a spin-off but still having the same format, is interesting in itself. But before anything, I kind of want to just dive in and see what this game is all about. So let's see what Splatoon Raiders is. Splatoon Raiders will center around a mechanic, you adventuring with deep cut to the mysterious Sphereolite Islands. We'll keep you updated as we conduct further research into this ongoing development. So out of the box, we know that it's centered around these islands, which seems kind of cool. And again, it seems to be semi-inspired by like Wind Waker or Subnautica, or like those sort of like adventure games. And I think calling this an adventure game is quite fitting, you know? It seems like a big single-player adventure, sort of gives vibes of like classic Zelda games, which is kind of fun. I've always thought that if the Zelda format died with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and like that's the new form of Zelda for the foreseeable future, we should have that existing format which we got through, you know, Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time, live on in other IP. I've always thought Kid Icarus would be a perfect game franchise to take over like that old school style of Zelda. But if this game is anything like those sort of experiences, that could be pretty bloody cool. And it seems like you're getting lots of upgrades and stuff. This seems like a very good experience in that regard, in terms of like, ooh, okay, collect all the MacGuffins. And we can even see in this wide shot, faintly under the tornado, that there seems to be like 3 sort of like island locations at least, like a little mini archipelagos, whatever, of different environments and stuff. It seems to be like a snowy area, maybe a rocky and a beach one or something. It's really hard to say out the gate, right? I could be entirely wrong on that. but does give the idea that this might be either a really big experience, like, you know, a big open world Splatoon game, which would be funny if this was open world, because we just got open world Mario Kart, you know, and everything else. I mean, it would be funny if, like, the Splatoon spin-off we do get, instead of it being a rhythm game, is a bloody open world adventure game. But regardless, we don't know if it's going to be a huge experience, or maybe something similar to how Bowser's Fury was, because if this is the size of that sort of game, because I just see 3 areas, and I just sort of think, okay, islands, 3 areas, it sort of gives me the vibe of Bowser's Fury. If it is that long, how expensive is this going to be? Is this going to work well as a spin-off? Is it going to be just maybe like a $30 experience? Or is this going to be a full-on $70 or potentially even $80 experience? I doubt it'll be 80. Probably going to be around 70, potentially less, depending on how big the experience is. I think if this is a small experience, Nintendo should probably price it quite reasonably, because that would then further legitimize what they said about, like, oh, we're going to have variable pricing, so like games which are less expensive, less intense, we're going to have a bit lower. Games which are higher intense, we can have a bit higher. Because that was the argument for pricing Mario Kart the way it was. So it will be interesting to see how big Splatoon Raiders really is. But let's get into more details about it, which we do have. We don't have very much, but we do have some. The new protagonist for Splatoon Raiders is apparently an expert mechanic with a mysterious background. Ooh. Actually, in the cutscene we see at the beginning, makes me think that we're actually the pilots or something, because you see them sort of like limping away, and I can already visualize immediately some cool sort of character creator where it's like, oh, who are you? And you take off a helmet, and then that's when you like customize your character and stuff. That's a very fun, diegetic way of having the character creation, and I feel like Splatoon does that a lot with its previous games, at least a little bit. I don't know, I just really like the character creation. Like the one in Octo expansion was super fun. Like there's a lot of really cool set pieces which just make you feel more immersed in the world, and that's so much better than just having like, oh, make a character. Okay, cool, you've confirmed, let's start. Like, Splatoon does it in a very fun way with a lot of finesse. So that's exciting. That's my theory, at least. Also, Deep Cut is like the main peeps to be with you for this whole experience. It's cool to have these guys get more spotlight, because we had so much time with Callie and Marie in all 3 games, because they've sort of got the single player experiences covered, both Splatoon 1, Splatoon 2, and Splatoon 3. We've had both DLCs covered with Off the Hook, and so having just part of the Splatoon 3 single player have a focus with Deep Cut did feel like they were missing out the most in terms of an experience which really fleshed out their characters and got a lot of time with them. So for this spin-off game to sort of take center stage with them actually is kind of fun. Single player experiences in base Splatoon, it's Callie and Marie. The DLC has Off the Hook, and then the spin-off game gets Shiver, Fry, and Big Man. So, you know what? Actually, good play on you guys. I think if I did anyone else for this spin-off, it would have felt a bit unfair to these 3. So, good on ya, Splatoon team. That's kind of fun. Maybe they didn't plan on that. Maybe that wasn't purposeful, but I think that was intentional, so I think that's quite cool. And then in the final part of a thread which Nintendo posted, it says, we've identified a variety of interesting findings, including a floating ship-like structure that serves as the mechanic's base. It's an island with a unique atmosphere. We'll keep investigating. Hashtag Splatoon Raiders. So that's another sort of interesting idea, that this feels like an adventure or like survival game almost. The fact that we have like a base to come back to, which we can like upgrade over time potentially, could be kind of fun. Water Splatoon just looks so cool, guys. I really feel like this water in this one image specifically, I want to drink so bad. It looks so good. I want to swim in that. Something. But it sucks because in Splatoon, you can't bloody swim. You can't swim at all. But the environment looks so nice. And I really like the idea of like, this doesn't look crazy visually intense, where someone could be like, oh yeah, this could run on Switch 1. Maybe it could, but at the same time, like, that's just by looking at the assets. I think if the world is super huge, seamless, you know, stuff like that, I kind of like the idea of Nintendo, instead of forcing down a horsepower route of like, okay, let's make things as high fidelity as possible, they're still going optimized, and they're just trying to use that extra horsepower for making it stable, and for also making the game run faster, and also for doing more heavy gameplay mechanics than heavy graphic stuff. So I'm always for more mechanics than graphics when it comes to like, okay, which one would you prefer? Like, I'd rather have a smooth experience, high frame rate, and crazy stuff going on, versus like, whoa, look at this crazy 30 frames per second high fidelity experience where you can only play by staring in this one direction. That ain't any fun. But also, in terms of like the swimming mechanic, or, you know, like Inklings can't swim, we have this little robot guy who looks perfect to be a submarine. You You know, I think this is like a little mechanic where you can follow around in it or something, where it follows you around. Still a lot of stuff to go on with this, but I think that could easily be a submarine where you can go like underwater and stuff. And just imagine how cool the underwater like biomes would look in Splatoon, and like the animals and creatures underneath there, because so many of Splatoon's creatures have adapted for land. Like I feel like being on a big island archipelago kind of situation, if they don't at least lean into a little bit in terms of what's under the ocean, I'm going to be a bit disappointed, because I would love to see like a really crazy, messy coral reef or like some crazy stuff going on. We also see in this screenshot that these are potentially shark eggs, so maybe there's something with like some sharks around or something. There's also these strange pillars in this one image, so a lot of stuff to really dissect, and I'm sure that the big Splatoon fans will really go ham on this in terms of going on all the design aspects of the new deep cut looks and who this new character is, who we're playing as, and everything really. But crazy that this all came from Nintendo Switch's little Nintendo Today app. It was funny because as soon as Switch 2 came out, they stopped posting on it entirely. And then, you know, whilst we had our guard down, like, okay, we're just playing Mario Kart, on a random Tuesday, they announced a Splatoon spin-off. Crazy. All right, guys, let me know what you think about Splatoon Raiders. Will you be picking up? How much do you think it will be? And do you think it'll be worthy as the first Splatoon spin-off? Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you guys in the next Mood News.